programs have been the hottest topics. When we're talking about police relations within the communities, when we're talking about housing, and now, of course, when we're talking about jobs. So I'm definitely eager to learn as much as possible. And of course, the whole point of learning is that when we know, we can also share that information, so we don't keep knowledge just to ourselves. With that, I'm going to ask our esteemed panelists to take a few minutes to introduce themselves, tell us who you are, how you represent the community, what department you might work for, and then from there we'll build on our questions, and also please challenge one another too, because I think that we also learn from our peers as well. Okay, so who would like to start? You can go down the line. Okay. How about we start with Brianna?
Should I use this one? Okay. Okay, thanks. Good evening. My name is Brianna Chiarier, and I am with Neighborhood House. I'm here to represent for both Neighborhood House and for the WorkSource system. And I am the Employment and Adult Education Manager at Neighborhood House, working on a variety of programs that help people find and attain jobs with livable wages. Our goal is always to help people to attain their goal for self-sufficiency. So we're doing a wide range of programs related to training and yeah.
My name is Margitu. Previously, I was Employment Case Manager with Neighborhood House, RIWA, for 15 years. Please don't ask my age. And then the past 2 years, I was a union organizer with SEIU 775. Now I'm with One America, South King County organizer, and I'm still in the business of the small business and minimum wage.
Good evening. My name is Nancy Yamamoto, and I work for the City of Seattle's Office of Economic Development. District health of small business districts in Seattle, so areas like Columbia City and West Seattle and other small neighborhood business areas that we focus on. And the one area that I work on personally is in our workforce development and training program. So there we're really focused on providing bridges to employment and jobs, as well as identifying ways for individuals to advance in their careers through the acquisition of new skills and credentials to help individuals be competitive in their job search and careers.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me and my fellow panelists here. Thanks to the Multimedia Resource Training Institute and the Race and Social Justice Office of the City of Seattle for putting this event together. I'm Kshama Sawant. I'm on the City Council in Seattle. And actually, we just won a re-election campaign in November of last year after, thank you, after having served the first 2-year term. And the first time when we ran in 2013, we ran citywide, so officially speaking, I was a citywide council member. But as you all remember, in 2013, a districts initiative also passed. And so when I ran last year, I ran as a candidate for District 3, which encompasses Capitol Hill, the Central District, Lesha, and so on. And so officially, I am now the District 3 council member. But of course, if you look at the issues that are of the most urgency to the people in our district, it's education, jobs, housing, the issue of mass transit, the lack of mass transit, and these are citywide and indeed region-wide issues. So I don't believe that we can have a parochial viewpoint about this. We have to have a citywide and region-wide approach to this. And just to remind everybody, in terms of our work on what would make standards of living better for though marginalized communities, especially young people who are coming into an economy that offers mostly only low-wage jobs. As you all recall, CTAC in Seattle took the leadership on $15 an hour. My office, my organization, Socialist Alternative, and the campaign that we launched, 15 Now, and the labor movement, SEIU 775, and many other unions were at the helm of this movement. But really the energy of the movement came from young workers themselves, many of them young workers of color. And that was a huge step forward. Again, in January, the wage has gone up, and it has gone nationwide, and it has forced the presidential candidates to say something about this. And as you know, Bernie Sanders has already come out in favor of $15 an hour. That shows the power of movements, and that's the approach we use, that we can make tremendous and historic policy shifts, but those policy shifts happen not because corporate politicians take the lead. They haven't taken the lead in decades, but it's when people on the ground start speaking up, that's when you see change, and that's how we can make a lot of things better for people in Seattle, including providing living wage jobs to people of all ethnicities and, you know, region-wide jobs.
Thank you all for being here. My first question is really about access. I have an echo behind me. So how does the community reach your departments, should they need to? And how do you reach out to the communities? And that can be anybody answering, and more than one person. Piggyback off of one another, please, if you need to.
For Neighborhood House, we're working in 20 locations in King County, and with a staff of over 250 people speaking 45 languages. So we're trying as much to be spread around King County where we need to be. Also, we're working in partnership with the WorkSource. So there are 7 WorkSource locations in King County, but there's also 22 connection sites where people can access computer labs and virtually connect to WorkSource. I think we're trying always to do outreach, and this is a great opportunity here to also share about what's available at the WorkSource and what kind of opportunities there are for people to reach to. And I would encourage everyone to check out the WorkSource skc.org website, which does have all of the workshops and information about all the locations too, for accessing information for any place you are in the job search or looking for training opportunities. I'll leave it there and continue on.
For One America, we have all over the state, Yakima, Vancouver, South King County, we have 3 different organizers. The South King County would be me. So I have to outreach to the people who's in need of the minimum wage increase, or looking for a job, or, you know, for better things. I don't wait in the office for them to outreach to me. So I'm always outside on the field, door knocking, go to businesses and go to employers, talking to people and advocating for the people who's in need of the job or minimum wage increase. Thank you.
So I was thinking about access in a couple of different ways. So I was thinking about creating access to jobs, and so maybe there's another question around that later on, so I'll reserve that thought. But just in terms of how we kind of interface with the community, we do that in a number of different ways, and it really depends on, you know, what business line we're talking about. But primarily, we work with our community partners around reaching out to folks. We have our business services team that does, you know, actively goes out and talks to folks. I think all of us in the office are out in the community a fair amount talking about our services and programs, so we try to do a good job of providing that information and getting out there.
So in addition to what they've already said, which I appreciate, you know, all the staff at the city departments and at organizations like One America, that the services that they provide, I would say that for everybody who's listening and people who you're going to talk to after tonight, please let them know that, if they don't already know, that my council office is the place that they can come if they want to ask questions, because what we do is we are not the ones who have the expertise for all of the issues that they have, but we can act as a conduit to lead them in the right direction. And if they don't know which department they should reach out to, it is not a problem. Just call or email my office and we will lead them to the appropriate resources. And also, if there are political issues that you need to discuss, I mean, just to give you an example of what I mean, a lot of workers, young people, especially young workers, who are immigrants, some of them undocumented, and therefore, very nervous about their status, they will come to my office and let us know that they're facing wage theft in their place of work, but they're afraid to speak out. That's a very common thing that happens. So just to let everybody who's watching on live stream or even here, if you yourself or if you know somebody who's facing issues like that, or if you faced employment discrimination for any reason, or if you think you did and maybe you didn't, but it's something you want to investigate, you should approach us so that we can help you ourselves, or we can direct you towards people who can help you with that.
So Nancy, you just alluded to what access really means. Can you speak a little bit more on that? And I'm sure everybody else can add a little something too.
So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I think it was listed on the agenda, is around the Mayor's Youth Employment Initiative, which is really structured to provide more access to jobs for young people. So, currently you hear about a really low unemployment rate across the city. It's about 4%, so it's pretty low. But when you look at young people, they experience unemployment at 3 times that rate. It's 13%. And then if you look at folks who represent certain communities, it's far worse. So individuals who don't have a high school diploma or degree, it's at 30%. So there's not the same access to jobs for everybody. There's not an equal playing field. And as part of the mayor's initiative, he's really trying to create those opportunities to jobs by getting young people connected to employers, whether they be internal to the city or with private employers elsewhere, so that they earn a wage and they begin to build their networks and connections, build their professional skills to create more access opportunities into their future. So.
And for everybody else on the panel, I know you brought up youth in particular, but do you work with youth as well, or is it 18 and older? Is it adults only? How does that work?
Yes, we do have a youth organizer at One America for South King County, and the other organizer in Yakima in Vancouver also have outreach to youths. So as Kashama said, One America is immigration reform, and nowadays we're seeing a lot of youth who's undocumented but looking for a job, and there is a family who is the same kind of issue. So One America will have some advocacy around that so that this family could get help. When we help users, we help the whole family in that.
I would just add that there are youth programs within Neighborhood House, but also at WorkSource as well, that are either around job search or internship and apprenticeship program as well. I think the youth programs are not at every single one of the sites, but they are available at some of the sites for WorkSource. And then in addition on that, when I'm thinking about access, and I don't want to jump ahead, but I'm thinking about language too. And so I wanted to just jump in there to say that that's something that we're always really thinking about too, and making sure that regardless of English language level, that people can get the help that they need when it comes to job search or whatever it might be, or training. So I want to share that that is possible, and that we have employment specialists that speak a number of languages that are available at the WorkSource. One of them is here with me tonight, Bill Hugh. But our employment specialists speak 9 languages. We're also partnered with Asian Counseling and Referral Service, who add more languages to our repertoire. And if we don't speak the language of that the person coming in to seek services is most comfortable with, we will provide free interpretation. So I want to make sure that when it comes to accessibility with language, that's part of that conversation too.
Just, I mean, those were very important points that were brought by my fellow panelists. I mean, about language barriers, cultural barriers overall when you're immigrants. And I thought Nancy's point was really important, that the overall U.S. macroeconomic indicators are good, and in a way it's good for the global economy because the rest of the economy isn't looking that good, and it's sort of riding on the fact that U.S. is doing not so bad right now. But that larger picture obscures what's happening to specific communities. So you're absolutely right. If you look at the unemployment rate for black population, if you look at unemployment rate for youth, if you look at unemployment rate for black youth, you'll see a completely different story for those communities. And they are really, it's not like they have fallen short, it's society that is failing them, and it absolutely needs to be recognized. And then on top of that, if you combine all of that with the reality of mass incarceration and the really, really horrific statistics on how likely it is if you're black or if you're Latino, how likely it is that you're going to end up in jail, have a record. And then when you come out of incarceration, the barriers that you face to get a job, rent an apartment, and so on. So there are programs in the city that do work, have shown to work well. You mentioned the Seattle Youth Violence Prevention Initiative. Also, Career Bridge has been an important program which came from the grassroots. It came from formerly incarcerated black people, black men who said this is just not acceptable, unconscionable that we have this situation. And it's shown to work, and actually I'm happy that in this last budget in November, I was able to lead up the effort to double the funding for Career Bridge. And all of that is great. I just wanted to add one last point, is that even that is great, but at the end of the day, these services are able to reach only a small proportion of the people who need them. And in order to actually address youth unemployment, actually address black poverty, we need we need to set our sights much higher. And I would say that for young people, their task is not only to learn to navigate the system, which they absolutely need to, because it's hard. It's hard for me to navigate the system. If I had to look for a job, I'll tell you, honestly, it would be hard. But really, if we want to make a change, then the young people need to get involved in social movements like the Black Lives Matter movement, like the movement for $15 and all, so on.
I hope young people are paying attention in the room. So please let me know if you have any questions, raise your hand and I'll pass it along. And I'm going to keep asking questions until I see a hand go up. And also even your experiences as well. Some of us have immigrated here and had our unique experiences within the job market. So we'd love to hear your story. If you're open to sharing, that would be awesome. So with everything you said, what would you say, and if perhaps there isn't just one, but what do you think the largest barrier to getting a job? I heard languages. I heard whether or not they're documented or undocumented, but are there trends that are popping up even with the low unemployment rate?
Yeah, we should add.
I think there are a lot of barriers for people that do have a criminal record or a background, and there is, there's just more barriers for those individuals. So it takes finding those employers that were willing to partner and to be employers for some of those folks too. And so that's an area I think we should be focusing on in part of the conversation.
My previous job with a neighborhood house and RIWA, I have seen, I serve mostly minority and refugee and immigrant families. So most of them, they don't have a transferable skill, which if someone came from a refugee camp, maybe they were farmers, they were maybe housewives, and when it comes to do the resume for them, we don't know where to put those skills so that they can get a job. And then the other thing is interview skill. Most of these people, they don't go through interviews. Here, the same thing too. You get a job through who you know. So going through the interview skill, what to say, what not to say, the culture played a big role in that. And so those things, giving the class to prepare for interview, filling up application, all those are the most barriers. Are you ready?
I think it's twofold. One is, there's a stat that says that 67 or 70% of all jobs in the state, and I think it's a national figure as well, will require some form of post-secondary education. So I think that there is an increasing demand for skills, and so what we hear from employers all the time is we have all these jobs, but we can't find individuals with the skills. So that's why we're really focused on that skills attainment and college career attainment as well, really focused on getting individuals with the skills and credentials that they need to be competitive. So we've worked on a number of programs in partnership with our Office of Immigrant and Refugees Affairs. The Ready to Work program is something that we worked with that starts to provide individuals with English language acquisition as well as the skills that they need and connect them with future education and training so that they could be successful. So a lot of the focus is around training and education. I think at the same time, too, there needs to be a better recognition on the part of the employers that come to us that they need to consider as a kind of talent acquisition strategy, not just bringing in folks from outside the state, but really supporting and training folks that are here as part of their talent pipeline. So that's part of the conversation that we're having with the Mayor's Youth Employment Initiative is let's get employers to see young people and other folks in our community as a potential talent pool, as well as at the same time skilling up those individuals so that they're ready for those jobs in demand.
Great. Okay. So before I move to any hands, yes, excellent. I'll save my question. Thank you. Wireless, even better.
Yes, I just have a few things to say about barriers of employment of immigrants. I see the number one barrier as intimidation. So, which we indirectly talked about. Undocumentation, that's a level of incarceration. English, all these are levels of intimidation. Now, when it comes to English, just because ESL classes are offered, it doesn't mean that they're adequate, okay? You need to do overkill. So if I voluntarily put myself through the same offered ESL class 5 times, I'll probably be good. No, I will probably be good. Overkill is good when it comes to English polishing. Not many people are encouraged to do that. This is a very out-of-the-box suggestion I'm making right now. Nobody's doing this. And it's not going to be in the budget to make a class 5 times longer. As far under expectation, as far as skilling up your immigrants, that's a part of under expectation, not offering the skills. Now, when the skills become offered, you have to have a legal way that no school can set up a school and skill these people without being accredited. Okay? Now, there are plenty of schools out there. When somebody says there's when the Department of Occupation, the Occupational Outlook Handbook, it's a government book, it's put out every year. OccupationalOutlookHandbook.gov. Okay, they have tons of jobs out there that people have never even heard of, and there's schools out there skilling those people. Some of those schools are accredited, some of them are not. But every single one of them are getting federal funding. So why should this non-accredited school get federal funding? You can cut a lot out there. Now, as far as one thing about intimidation is casting. I see a lot of pamphlets that you can just tear off a bus or a bulletin board, and it says, if you want to get trained in this, you could, go to our website or go to our school, and they have pictures of people, models usually doing the job. If these models don't look like the diverse group you're trying to reach, that's a level of intimidation that they will not imagine themselves. So you have 75% of people that don't see a likeness in the advertisement won't even think about pushing that further boundary to do that. And one thing about business also, as far as suggesting businesses, you have to incorporate that with the feasibility study. If you don't incorporate it, go into a business with feasibility study, what you're doing is you're stimulating the economy. You're creating a small business industrial complex, which you're making a lot of money in your regulations paper in the startups, but the startups aren't making it. Okay? Feasibility study or small business startup programs without feasibility study means equals nothing. What's in front of the equal sign and what comes after the equal sign. Okay? That's my suggestions.
Well, first of all, thank you for coming and give us a hope and discussion about employment. My name is Girma Ayala. I'm from Ethiopia, and I've been here for some time. And I'm also a business owner. I own a lot of business. A couple of business around Seattle and some other business here in International. And I'll say two things regarding the challenge that we have as a business owner to hire these young people here in Seattle. And most often they have criminal record, pet theft, when they were young, juveniles. And this is the only advanced country that tags its own children and follow them all the way to life. And I'm here to advocate on their behalf that a country like United States to have such young people, especially the black children, to be tagged for life after they serve is not only unjust, it is unhuman. And there's two young people I was trying to hire, and unfortunately, they did some pet theft when they were young, 17 years old, and still their record shows still they are bad human being for life, and this is unjust. And Council Member Sawata, you've been incredibly helped to most low wage, and you sponsor that low wage to $15. Now it's contagious, going to all over United States. And you come as we are, as an immigrant from a country of wisdom, and I think we can really guide this incredible country to have a common sense regarding our children. And so my suggestion and my hope that we can discuss about these children. One, unfortunately, their race and color determine their future. And it's a random selection of, they don't choose to be like in this crisis and this life. But the environment they've been born put them in this puzzle of life. So I think we have to advocate to clear or vacate their record from their life so they can move on to the next life there is in life for them. The second point that I would like to make is regarding, it's for Nancy actually, economical development. And most of our immigrant community, they would like to start up a new business. And the difficulty they have, they don't have resources or a credit to start that. And definitely in this capitalist country, someone credit is so important, so vital for life and for business. So do you have a micro loan for those people who want to start a new business. And those are the 2 points that I want to make. Thank you.
Should I respond? So with respect to finance, that's one of the suite of services that we offer. I can't really, and I could connect you with the person in our office who really handles that, but we do partner with community organizations like Community Capital Development and Washington Cash to provide financing for small business development. There's also a number of technical services and support that we provide as well. So we have some folks on staff that work with, I'm thinking about our restaurant success program, and so we have a person on staff who works with individuals who are interested in starting a restaurant around kind of all the things that they need to do to navigate to do that. And we could put you in touch with other technical services that are available to small businesses as well. I had this flyer that I had meant to bring today, but I don't see it in my materials, but it's a small business resource fair that the Seattle Public Library is putting on January 21st. So again, if you're interested in that, let me know and I could find out more details about that. But a number of organizations and services will be available at that time to support small businesses who are interested in either, expanding their business or starting up a new business.
I work at WorkSource Renton, and I work for Neighborhood House. Okay. For youth or adults who have this background issues or other issues, we work with employers who hire people specific with background issues. And we are working, I work with adults, but we also work with young people who has background issues. I have some flyers over there, but they can contact me at WorkSource Renton, and we can connect them with employers who hire people that have background issues. And most of our customers are immigrants and refugees with limited English, and we can also help all people from all backgrounds. And I think we are doing a good job in putting people back to work, and we help them with their resume, interview techniques, and other things. And we help unemployed and underemployed people to be job ready and contribute to the economy.
Thank you for letting me put you on the spot. Sure. We do have a question right here, if you don't mind getting out of turn.
All right. Thank you. Can you hear me? First, I'd like to applaud you for taking the time from your busy schedule to this important event. And then while I'm here, I met so many people that I work with. Margitu, we work together, and Baliu, and also Brianna. I work for Neighborhood House. I manage the employment education. After I left, she took over my position. And Nancy, and it's a great job, the Ready to Work program that Nancy mentioned. I am the director for the Ready to Work program. It's very, very, and then very nice to see you for what you did, Kashima, as well. One of the things I'd like to ask you is that in my work during the employment section, and when I try to help people to get a job, livable jobs in many, many years, what I never anyone. One of the challenges for the immigrants and refugees are the deficiency in English language. Because of that situation, they are usually unemployed or even underemployed. So I have seen people who have a master's degree or bachelor degree that because they are not able to articulate themselves to speak as a language like everybody else, and they are underemployed. So that's one of the things. And another thing I like to bring for the council, especially, is that unemployment is really going down. But and then again, it's not necessarily that more people are employed. People are accepting less jobs with less money, and because that's the reason many people are employed. Skills has become very vital. Technology and other things. So what is the city or the council are trying to do to tackle especially the barriers? You can bring as many refugees and immigrants here, but they don't really, they come in during their adulthood when they come here. It becomes so difficult to learn the English. It's difficult for them to assimilate with the American society. So what is the cities doing for those who lacks the English language and also the technical sufficiency, because the skill level is going to be very difficult to find a job. As you mentioned, Shawan, nowadays it's not that easy. It's easy to find a very minimum job, but not that easy to find a very high-paying job, even if you have an education, because of the barrier of the English language. So what is the city? But I am very, very proud. I'm directing the Ready to Work program, and I like to applaud the mayor of Seattle for really, really approving, and then we are making a difference in this space. So I'd like to make a point of that, and thank you for your time as well.
Thank you. I'll make it short. So, one of the things that always we overlook or underlook is about the people who spend so much on education. And we have, especially the immigrant community, there are a lot of educators who has done well undergraduate and graduate level because they believe whatever you invest in education, you are not only investing in yourself, you are also investing in the future of this country. And there are many of them. So my question is, we talk about college career, skill, and all those. How do we integrate those working force? Because they lack networking, and also in most cases, the employment, the mayor employment initiative is a good thing. How do we make accountable for those people within the city who abuse their authority by hiring individuals who are not well qualified, who are not well connected to the community? So those are the issues keep coming in the city. I mean, how do you, especially the city, how do they get the best from the community so that they make a change? Because most often the people that hire to serve the community are outsiders. They don't know the culture. So this is one of the things that keep happening in the city on different levels. Myself, as a former employee of the city of Seattle, I worked in HR, and I was part of race and social justice system. I can talk about that in details because we can have all the laws we can. If there is a mechanism to force it, then it doesn't mean nothing. It's only political correctness.
There is some background noise, so I had a hard time hearing the question. So can you rephrase that?
A quick rephrasing would be, how does the city kind of rectify issues of hiring people who are not competent for the job? Competency meaning the cultural competency and probably the racial diversity and experiential, the education level, and then their connection within the communities.
I mean, the city's hiring, I'm just trying to really get at the root of the question. So,
okay, it is two-tier question that I'm asking. One, you have a lot of people who are graduated with undergraduate and graduate degree.
okay.
How do we integrate those people in the workforce? Because we always focus on those people who lack the skills and education. We have plenty of those people also on the other side who are well accomplished. How do we integrate? Most of them they drive taxi, most of them are self-employed. So it is waste of money and waste of resources. And it is discouraging for our kids. They see their dad, mom, they have masters and they have a PhD and they are working on you know, on service level. One of the questions, and also the second question is, whenever there is a hiring process that pretends to the community, why don't they get from the community? Because we have well-qualified people. Those are the two questions that I will ask.
I think it really goes back to that access issue and ensuring that individuals who are qualified have opportunities and access to those jobs. So it's hard for me to speak for the city at large, but I can only speak from my experience working with you know, the Mayor's Initiative and other of our workforce initiatives, is that we look at this as a continuum, you know, that there's a continuum of skills and there's a continuum of ability, and that there needs to be opportunity for individuals all along. Didn't like my answer. So all along that continuum, there needs to be those opportunities. You know, there is institutional racism everywhere, right? And there's also institutional racism that we are working against within the city as well as outside the city as well. So working with, I think it's largely working in partnership with the community to bring down those barriers, right? I don't think that are the city by themselves are able to break down those barriers. It has to be a community-wide effort. It has to be a partnership to make sure that individuals in your community who are qualified are able to access jobs, whether they be within the city or outside.
I want to point out that that's a global conversation right now, especially with particular to Syria right now, going to Europe. I know that that's something that's been on the news a lot, is we have highly educated immigrants, and how do we employ them now that they have come to their new country? So.
Glenn Scott Davis with the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs with the City of Seattle. To one of the points you raised, in the recent budget, the mayor allocated a very, not a large grant, but a small amount, and working with One America, did the advocacy around this, to do a feasibility study for the creation of a welcome center in Seattle. And the idea would be that in the next year, our office, between now and June, would do a study to determine what that would look like, what it would take to do it, and basically what it would be folks who come into Seattle who are refugees and immigrants and have skills from other countries, have college degrees, have other credentials. How do we fast track people into getting credit for those and getting placed into jobs and so on? So it's a small initiative, but it could make a big difference for a lot of folks who have all of these obstacles, who do come in with those skills. I just wanted to mention that because that could be a very positive. Some of you may know about the program that exists at Highline. There's a Welcome Back Center at Highline, which has done some interesting things, but in the city of Seattle, we'll be working with the colleges, with One America, the city council, to try to figure out how we could address that particular missing piece, which hopefully will fill some gap. So as folks come in, they'll know where to go and get good advice and counsel. Mention that.
Thank you. Thank you for stealing Paul's time.
So my question kind of relates back to the cooking. And so Seattle is a world-class city. We have University of Washington, we have Seattle U, we have Central Seattle College, not community anymore, Seattle College. And I have a question related to the pipeline. So since I know of a brother who's using the, not Hillman City, but the South, and he's using that as a grade school culinary program that he has. I think his name is Def the chef, and he's actually going to start a restaurant in Africa. I can't remember exactly where, but anyway, he's teaching grade school kids about culinary arts. There should be a pipeline that goes from there to the Art Institute or whatever other college has a culinary program, and then from there to an actual job, right? And so I invited Theo, the owner of Island Soul, to come. He couldn't make it, and he was telling me that Theo was actually one of the originators of the Career Bridge program out of Urban League. So it seems like there should be a pipeline that goes from grade school, home, grade school, high school, college, internships, everything. I mean, I think Def the Chef, just the culinary program is just one. We're living in Seattle, and this is like the most, as far as aerospace, there's airports all over. And I know there's an aerospace high school here, and I'm aware of a nonprofit, Pacific West Aerospace Academy, but there should be, there again, a pipeline to go from grade school to high school, intern through the Pacific West Aerospace to get into Boeing, and then there you go. You go to college, get your engineering degree, and you're set. And so I think the city could probably work better with a lot of the nonprofits and the colleges and high schools here to help work that out. So that's my comment.
Well, as a youth worker, I can definitely vouch for that. When you have young people who are ending the program by the end of the summer and not having anything to look forward to again, starting the cycle all over again and not necessarily building their skills from season to season. And that kind of funding opportunity and employment opportunity for youth is definitely something that is lacking.
My name is Abdullahi Chama, and I'm a member of East African Community. Just would like to add a comment about the credential issue that a lot of people, friends talk about it. And when I was working in One America a long time ago, we advocate this issue. And really, Seattle is a diverse city, but at the same time, it's not diverse when it's coming to the city or county or state employees. Minnesota is more diverse. Minnesota has a good program for immigrant and refugee population. They are everywhere. They work with the county, they work with the city. Some of them are city council, or they run in different political office. We were campaigning for last 20 years about the Welcome Center that you're talking about it, and really, Pramila was the champion of that program, and I was working with her in 2001 when we raised this issue, because we have seen a lot of PhD who are driving taxi. We have seen medical doctors who are driving truck, and that's really, when we are back home in Africa, we call brain drain. So, but now they have a different term, which I don't remember. Brain, yes, yes. Yeah, okay. So basically, what I would like to suggest is that when the Welcome Center is open, there should be, the center has to work with the educational institutions, like the one Minnesota has a long time ago. I don't know whether they still have or not. If you are a doctor from other country of the world, studied in abroad, you go to the center, and they will teach you like 9 months about the medical terminology, the English language, and they try to pass the medical exam. If you are an economist, the same. If you are a lawyer, the same. So why don't we have here in Seattle, Washington? So that was my contribution.
Does anybody on the panel want to respond to that? That was a lot of excellent points and questions that you raised.
Well, that's the intent behind the mayor's funding, or the city council funding the study for the Welcome Back Center. So what we're going to be doing in the next 6 months is looking at models like Minnesota, San Francisco, and Denver, and other cities. And before we rush off and make a recommendation to the city council, do it really work for folks who do come in with credentials. And I think it's something like a third of all of the immigrants in Washington state come in with educational credentials. And while many folks are successful, there's many who just don't get help from existing systems. So part of it's going to be working with the colleges and working with other institutions like the workforce system to replicate what's been successful in other communities.
And to one of the points that were made earlier, and I think it is important to note access for people coming from different countries with education, but also access to people here with education who are here and trying and working hard and taking the steps, but still somehow are not able to go through those channels. And I'm sure there are tons of different experiences in this room in terms of job search. I mean, I've been in this country for over 30 years, and yet, you know, I think I speak English well enough, and still I've had my own barriers, and sometimes you just can't, you know, resources, I've sought it out, and yet, why are there still these roadblocks? Is it really about who you know, or are there these pipelines that support us in accessing, you know, our potential?
What a few points to add, but I don't know if you wanted others to come in. I thought a lot of good points were made. Abdullah, on the question of portability of your educational qualifications, I think that's absolutely should be done. It seems, I mean, it's a no-brainer. And I think that the questions that have been raised about, you know, why don't we do this, why don't we do that, I thought Paul said it really well. You know, it should be simple. And I'll be very honest with you, this is not about, I mean, we don't lack, as a human race, as a city, we don't lack creativity to figure out how this can be done. You know, we can figure out administrative and other solutions to ensure portability of educational qualifications. We can figure out how to establish adult ESL classes that really work, and also, you know, for a lot of people. We can incorporate a very good suggestion that you brought up, which is the overkill that you said, you know, overkill for ESL. You know, take the same class many times in order to really ensure that you actually learn. You know, just to share with you, I mean, I'm an economist and a professor as well. So in education, one of the basic tenets you use is repetition. You know, repetition is half the job, because nobody, just by the way the human brain functions, retains everything that they've heard the first time. So part of your job as educator is to reiterate the most important points so that students walk away with having learned the most important things. So my point is that none of this is rocket science, and even rocket science has been done. So it can be done. So I want to go to the fundamental issue. What is the fundamental reason these things are not happening, and including what you said about, you know, can we wipe the record clean for a young kid who maybe did something silly, and why should that young kid pay a price for it when he's 30, 40, 50? And honestly, there are other kids who do the same things, because kids are kids, and kids will do things that don't pay the price, because we have a deep racial and ethnic disparity. And of course, you know, I would say that with the caveat that I don't want any young kid to be penalized for life for doing something silly. You know, we need to be a zero youth detention city and a zero youth detention country. And instead, we have the dubious distinction of having the largest number of people in prison. And on top of that, a racial disparity that is just horrendous. So what's the bottom line? Why is none of this happening? I think to get to that, we have to look at larger, you know, systemic issues. You mentioned capitalism. This is the reality under capitalism. One of the realities under capitalism, especially now in the post-recessionary era, is there just aren't enough jobs to go around, and there just aren't enough good jobs to go around. And as a matter of fact, and I'm speaking as an economist here, under capitalism, it is in the interest of the ruling elite. You know, I don't mean business owners like you, I mean like the really top echelon. It's in their interest, the people who run the Federal Bank and Federal Reserve Bank, and people who run the White House and Congress. it is in their interest to never have enough jobs, because if you had enough jobs, you would feel secure enough to question your workplace conditions, and then it completely changes the balance of forces. It completely changes the dynamic between capitalists and workers. I mean, I know this might sound textbook to you, but this is actually what happens in the economy. So what is the result of that? The result of that is that the people, because there aren't enough jobs to go around, enough services to go around, you could fund adult ESL services for every immigrant who comes to the city. Why not? Seattle is a wealthy city. One of you said it yourself. The reason it doesn't happen is because if they did that, then it would empower the grassroots to a point where it would start shifting the things even more, because once you give jobs, once you give education, then people will say, well, what about my single-payer healthcare? What about my this and what about my that? And it really threatens the status quo that they are trying to maintain so delicately. So that's why you have a situation where, on the one hand, immigrants who are well-qualified don't get access to jobs, good jobs that they should be getting by right. And on the other hand, as you mentioned, Tasita, there are so many, inner city kids that grow up here, kids who may be children of immigrants, but then now they've grown up in America, who never get any opportunities. And we're talking about college, but the elephant in the room here is that college is so darn expensive now. Now the United States has another great distinction. We have $1 trillion in student debt. How do we expect students to go to college and get the education? I mean, hypothetically speaking, even if there were enough good jobs to go around, which there aren't, how are students going to go to college in the first place? Community college itself has become, I know community has been taken off, but I worked at Seattle Central and I'm going to call it community college, because the mandate of the Community Colleges Act in the 1960s was to make good quality higher education accessible to inner city kids who had no other option, no other way, nowhere else to go after high school. That was a mandate of the community colleges. And now we have even community colleges inaccessible to those kids because the tuition is high, financial aid has been squeezed, and because now, we have this 4-year college system where now they're aiming for other things, and it's not really, the mission has been lost. So how do we deal with all of this? I just wanted to throw out a couple of concrete solutions. In Seattle, I mean, this is indeed a nationwide and global question, but in Seattle, there's a lot of wealth, right? Do we have an income tax that can tax the very wealthy? We don't. Where will we get the resource? That is a basic problem in Seattle. We have such great ideas for services. We have such wonderful service providers here in this room who have dedicated their life, but there isn't enough money. Why? Because we don't tax the wealthy, because we don't tax big business. Very simple, right? Tax the rich. Make funding available to make community college free for all kids in Seattle. That's one simple thing. But it's simple in the technicality of it. It's very difficult politically speaking, because when you start saying all these things, you start making enemies in high places. And that is why I might sound like a broken record, but that is why I come back to building movements, because unless we build that kind of political energy, we are not going to achieve that. That is the only reason why we achieved 15, the only reason why we've come as far as we have on LGBTQ rights or immigrant rights. And then one other thing I will throw out, we should also be fighting, and this is something I've been talking to Pramila about, is voting rights, municipal voting rights for all people who live in Seattle, regardless of their origin and their visa status.
Hi, I just had a few more things. I second and third. Now, another thing, as far as rule changes, we have Russian immigrants, we have France and Germany, Poland, Canada. California changed the requirements to become governor to allow Arnold Schwarzenegger to be governor. Okay, I'm sure we can change the rules so some Africans can enjoy their way of life, swell the U.S. tax base, and have things, it's like the bear trying to get too many cookies, just being greedy, and it's choking itself off. Anyway, that's it.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I wanted to, as time is getting, as time is going quickly, I wanted to make sure we spend a little time talking about small businesses too. I know there was only one question, but in terms of access, but how many small business owners are here? Or independent contractors? I know, raise your hands. Asfaha, 3, 4, 5. Have you faced any challenges with starting your business or maintaining it, or even finding employees? What has been your experience? Anybody that would like to share from their perspective?
Thank you very much. My name is Adisu. I'm a real estate agent in Seattle, around Seattle. Well, the personal challenge that I may call would be the specific technical skills to run a business, you know. So everything is depend on you. You are the one, business owner or you know, independent contractor or whatever. You run your business, you generate everything, you do your marketing, everything. So especially if you are from foreign country where you might not be able to understand the system here, it would be very helpful if there is an entity out there to support, you know, to train how to run a business. And I know that a lot of businesses in Seattle, you know, the immigrant businesses or minority businesses are failing because of, I think, they just don't know how to run a business, because even though they have a great idea. So yeah, specific technical skill to run a business, that's maybe a support where I think we need. Thank you.
Well, the challenge we have as a small immigrant business is a line of credit. The power of credit is so important. That's what I mentioned, this capitalist way of working. Unless you have that capital, unless you have your... we are the first generation here in the U.S., and we don't have ancestral credit backing or collaterals, and therefore we are in disadvantage. It's not that we are not creative. As a matter of fact, you know, the app that Uber has was actually designed by us, by me and others, before even Uber knows Seattle. And you can find that in King County proposal in 2009, September 2009, to a council member. She's no longer there, but they were recruiting taxi advisory board. And at the time, you know, I proposed this is a way of the future. So line of credit is one thing that's so important. And the use of African American and African, the disadvantage they have, this power of credit starts when, you know, you have $25 credit. And imagine a lot of young people in college and others, because they don't have that background, how to maintain and keep that credit. They screw the credits for $200, and then they forbid to have that capitalist power. So I think that's the challenge that we're facing, as having that to build our own business structure. Where do you get that money? How do you get collateral that from? Or, you know, I'm in the medical field, to get that X-ray or MRI. You have to have collateral with it. Now, what is your priority to collateral that? So the challenge of credit is very important, and I hope in the future the system will help this underserved community how to build the credit. Micro loans, that's what it will build that credit back. Then you become to the capital structure. And the city, I think, should advocate. I mean, there is new money right now for this state. And marijuana taxes is just hugely there. And it's over $128 million, I think, last year alone. So I think we deserve to have, the city of Seattle deserves, because in my office there is about 4 or 6 marijuana stores there. So I think the city has to, you know, get that portion of that money, because most of the users and buyers are right that community center. And that money can be allocated for such kind of, including economical development or credit loans. So But thank you.
Yeah, I'm certainly not an expert in small businesses as you are, but I would just say I think there's even an organization in this very building, so someone else may know, that does mentor people starting their own businesses. The name is escaping me, but there is an organization that does that is located in this building. But also I wanted to just say that we have the Financial Empowerment Center and financial counselors that work with Neighborhood House that help people to do a variety of things, but not necessarily set up businesses, but help with talking through credit. I know credit's very confusing I think for young people. I don't know about everyone else's experience, but for me, even we didn't really learn about what all that means, through high school. I learned about it a little bit in college, but it's a daunting topic. And for immigrants or refugees who don't have that system, and maybe they don't come from a place where, you have the same type of system. It's very unique here, comparatively speaking. So meeting with somebody that's a free service to just learn about credit and try to help set things up and get some one-on-one counseling, for financial counseling, maybe I just wanted to throw that out there as something that is a resource to tap into.
So any final thoughts from our panelists? I always like to leave spaces not just displaying the problems, but we've spoken of many solutions, but to always end on that note of possibility, that high note, because there's a lot to celebrate still. And so any final thoughts from the community and from our panelists before we close?
As Abdullahi, one of my coworker in the audience, One America has been doing outreach to the small business owners. As you all know, the recent incident between the Muslims, refugee, immigrants community coming to the United States, especially the president candidate, I don't know what his name is, but he doesn't want us to live in the United States. Or this is the flyer that I'm taking around. There is everyone is welcome. To small business owners. Yeah, it's a Trump, I guess, yeah. So if you don't mind, take this with you. And then my last comment also for City of Seattle is not because the council member is here and one of the worker from the city. The City of Seattle is growing. I lived here for 20 plus years, and the refugee and immigrant community does not have any representatives, like people who looks like me, not working for the city. We wanted to ask the City of Seattle to outreach to this growing refugee and immigrant community to hire them so that people could go out there relay or talk to someone who looks like, it's a good outreach for the City of Seattle to hire diverse group of people who is growing, like the East African. We grow so much. So we want somebody to come out, and when you hire, please make us in the decision making. We know who works for our community, who is a good fit for that position. Thank you. That's all I want to say.
I would like to say thank you for the panel, in particular to Councilwoman Kashama. We were last time on the candidate forum with CERC. You have shown, you have proven yourself without any shadow of doubt, whether you are a native born, whether you are immigrant, what counts is your idea. And that became an inspirational for our kids and the generation to come. So I thank you for this. Having said that, on Monday, Martin Luther King, we have a workshop on Garfield in terms of employment, wage theft, and so on. So I will invite you to come all. And also, Clarence, if you have to say something, is also part of the leadership for coalition of immigrant, refugee, and communities of color. So let's organize, and we'd like to see more this kind of panel, because it will pay the future. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a great resource. Martin Luther King Day, Garfield High School, before the march. There are all kinds of classrooms, that all the classrooms in there filled with awesome workshops. So thank you for that reminder.
For repair and everything, how do you go about it? How do you complain to the Department of Planning and Development, which is now known as it's now split up, but whatever. How do you go to the city and, lodge a formal complaint? Even just practical things like that. And I'm sure I'll see you all at MLK Day on Monday. So thank you all.
Thank you to all of the panelists. And final word will be to Asaye, but I did have kind of a fun little question for the panelists before you do your final word, if that's okay. So, because again, we've got young people not only in the room, but listening from the internet, and they will be hearing this again. If you can give us a brief journey that got you to your current positions.
I'm recently came back to this country after 5 years abroad in East Africa, actually, and some in North Africa as well. So I kind of came back to Seattle as a homecoming. I actually grew up here. I think what got me to where I'm currently working is passion for social justice, which I started with, and I aligned that with studies for, and my college, I'm sure helped a lot, yeah, I know various other, one thing leads to another, I guess. But
the reason I ask is I think that it's not always a straight and
it's
narrow
not.
road.
That's why it's hard to answer.
That's why I also think it's really fascinating. And many times, perhaps as a child, you also had a social justice passion, and that led you to all of the other places that led you here, including your college.
Yeah. You said it better than I could.
When I first came to United States with my 6 siblings, my dad, my mom, to Seattle, there was no service that was providing to help us to find a job or housing, this and that. So as an oldest child, I always wanted to help my community. I'm always passionate that then nobody did this for me, but I always wanted to help my community. That's what got me to this journey, and that's it.
And Margitu, if I can speak on your behalf, you've done it in many ways. So through sharing of culture and dance, that's how I met you the first time, fashion shows, for young women, especially East Africans, one of the things that you stood out for me in the beginning was that you modeled, which was like huge. Because, being on stage, number one, but remember how we say, hold your head high, show your beauty, and don't be ashamed of it, don't be afraid of it. So I acknowledge you for that and all the different ways, from politically to culturally to artistically.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to encourage the youth that watching. Please don't forget your language, your culture, and then if you forget that, that's it. It's done for us. Nobody knows where we came from. If you're Ethiopian, Eritrean, Oromo, Somali, please make sure you keep your culture. Just like she said, my daughter speaks 2 languages, Oromo and Amharic, perfectly, but she was born and raised here. She's always proud who she is. And so please don't forget who you are, and don't forget your culture. Thank you, Tizita.
So I think, like the other panelists here, that we're driven by the impact that we want to make. So I think that's my story as well. I was born in Seattle to immigrant parents. I grew up on Beacon Hill. I still live in Southeast Seattle. And, I'm dyed, husky colors, purple and gold. Went to Rainier Beach and went to Asa Mercer and went to the University of Washington. My husband's also grew up less than a mile away from me, so we are very rooted in this community. And my path has been very varied in terms of how it got me here, but my goal was always to make an impact on my community and to find the best way to do that. So my advice to young people is set your sights on a goal. The path that you get to your goal might be very different from what you expected, but as long as you have your sights on your goal, there's a way to get there. And I do want to make a plug for the Mayor's Youth Employment Program. So the Seattle Youth Employment Program is a year-round program that provides opportunities for young people to get connected to internships, and they really do a good job of trying to connect young people with career interests. So gets your foot in the door with perhaps a potential employer down the road. So encourage all the young people that are watching to check that out and maybe put in an application for this summer.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for SYEP. Excellent community partners.
Well, like many people here, the passion for social justice often starts early. For me, I grew up in India, and it was perhaps the most important thing I ever thought about. I think it's even accurate to say I was sort of obsessed with the question of poverty and inequality and sexual violence and just the overall, the stark divide that you see between people who have more than they could ever spend, and then you have this mass, this ocean of poverty and misery, and there's no explanation for that. Why should that exist at a time when the human race is capable of incredible technological and medical achievements? There is more than enough food to feed everybody. There's food rotting in the granaries in every country, and there's 500 million people, dying of starvation in every so often, and then not to mention the suffering of very young children under the age of 5, who did nothing wrong, but their crime was they were born into a world that won't satisfy their basic needs. So for me, it was never. I was always clear that it was never. If I wanted to do something useful, it was never going to come out of some job. I knew that there was no job per se that could change the world. It has to be activism. It has to be political activism. And so, to be honest with you, I was, mostly, I often tell my students, and they're young and listening to this, getting my call for you to be politically involved is not an excuse to get bad grades in school. I was a very good student, but I was never ambitious for myself. I never had an ambition for a job, a career, to make it big for myself. And I was always, all my life, looking for something to get involved in, but it had to be something that I agreed with. And so I just sort of, I was good at maths, so I got a degree in engineering. Then I came to the U.S. for a job, and then I got my PhD in economics. But all of that was sort of, as you said, Brianna, sort of the path towards something that you're actually looking for. So just coincidentally, when I came to Seattle, I ran into Socialist Alternative, which is a nationwide organization of social and economic justice activists. And I heard one speech by one of the members, and I knew that was it. That was what I was looking for. That was in 2009. And since then, I worked as a teacher in Seattle Central and Seattle U, but primarily my passion has not been that. It has been as an activist. And so when we ran for office, sorry, it's a long story, but when we ran for office, I say we because it wasn't like my personal decision. I didn't get up one morning and say, I want to be a celebrity, I want to do something that makes me famous. It wasn't like that. We decided democratically that it was important to run a different kind of campaign, a campaign independent of the corporate parties, independent of corporate influence, and show what the grassroots can do. And so we ran the campaign for city council. We won, and we won the re-election. We've shown that people are actually hungry for a real alternative, and nationally you can see the incredible response that Bernie Sanders has got for his call for a political revolution against the billionaire class shows that young people are just fed up. They don't want the status quo anymore. They want a change so badly. And it's
presidential election time, we might give up, we might lose so many rights. So we have to get involved and interact, have questions, so we can get answers. And otherwise, the main problem we had is representation. Of course, you have been discussing about that. If we don't have our representation in the local government, if you don't see our faces, who represent us, I think it's going to be a big problem. So this kind of conversation will make a difference. And thank you all. Really appreciate for your coming. And please visit us. We are 23rd in Jackson. We have a studio. So just would like to say thank you again. And before we leave, I would like to bring everybody to come here, and so we can take a group picture.
Also, there's a wealth of resources on that table, so please take extra to share with your communities. Thank you.
Everybody, can you